My name is Oliver Queen. For 5 years, I was stranded on an island with only one goal. Survive.
Oliver Queen is alive.
Now I will fulfill my father's dying wish to use the list of names he left me and bring down those who are poisoning my city. To do this, I must become someone else. I must become something else.
Hello and welcome to the ArrowFansUK Season Review Podcast. I'm joined today by CJ Allan from Spoiler TV and Doctor Who Spoilers.
Hey guys, how's it going?
And also Cory Varney, who helped me out on the site.
Oh yeah.
So in this review, what we're going to be talking about is what we thought of the entire Arrow season so far, some of the ratings, and some of the things we're hoping to see in the next season of Arrow. So we'll start off by going to the present day scenes. Cory, what did you think of as a whole over the season, what we saw in the present day of Arrow?
Well, I think it developed nicely as it went on. The structure to it as well. I think the writing improved, and I quite like the way that, I suppose that's a bit for later, about how the present and the flashbacks link nicely episode per episode. I think specifically with the present day scenes, the first 3 episodes, I think it was, we had the voiceover from Oliver about basically what he was thinking, what he was planning. And I thought it changed nicely when Dig was introduced to things. I think episode 4, and we didn't have the voiceover anymore. I thought it helped it flow a little bit better after that.
Yeah, it was good having Diggle. I think we heard a little bit in episode 4, but after that it was because Diggle was there, you could talk about it freely.
Yeah.
CJ, what did you think of those voiceovers?
I kind of like them. I like the kind of little voiceovers and what he's thinking, and sort of kind of remind me a bit of Scrubs as well, where you can kind of have this intro at the start and then it kind of rounds it up towards the end. But yeah, I see what Cory means about it seems to flow a bit better without them, but I quite like them. I like those sort of things.
I've been watching a bit of Person of Interest lately. I've noticed it's a bit in that as well. I think it's very different from other shows that you see where it's just procedural. You get insight into what the main character is thinking, and I think it's quite good.
I think you needed that though at the start, because to some people Green Arrow is a new character that no one is aware of. A lot of people may have watched Smallville, that was on the CW years and years ago now, and they've got this totally different idea of who he is, and I think maybe in Arrow they need to kind of reset that and show the inner workings of this character to make people realise this is a totally different Archer that they've seen previously on TV and in comics.
Yeah, so once episode 4 had passed and we've got Diggle into Team Arrow, as it's been called, Oliver obviously changed quite a lot. He's he's made it so that it's less violent, I thought. Cory, what did you think of that?
Yeah, well, I think perhaps, Dig sort of seemed to act as his conscience in a sense. Any decisions he made, I think particularly episode 6, when he wasn't so keen to go after the robbers of the bank because they'd shot that cop, but Dig made him go see him, and Ollie kind of changed his viewpoint there. And I think sort of, obviously at the minute, he's vigilante, and we're kind of seeing the gradual change from that into a hero. And obviously, as we know, heroes don't really tend to kill people, so it's working out quite nicely, and Dig seems to be leading him onwards quite well. Yeah,
there were definitely a lot less kills from Oliver throughout the season after we saw Diggle and Felicity, in fact, come into the mix. CJ, what do you think about that?
Obviously, yes, with him being this kind of superhero, you expect him not to kill people, and I think from the get-go, we're trying to show this is a darker Oliver McQueen, and that he's not living by the rules of, say, a typical superhero, as it were. And I thought it was quite interesting as well. They kind of ditched the whole playboy side of Oliver after the first, say, 6 or 7 episodes. They were kind of doing this kind of dual personality. During the day he was this playboy, had a bad reputation, and then during the night he was Arrow. They've kind of just pushed that aside now, and you don't really see the playboy side of him like he's trying to hide his identity anymore.
No, I totally agree there. With Diggle, there were, as long as there was times that he was really happy to have Diggle on his side and it helped as his conscience, there were a couple of times that he was quite annoyed to have Diggle there, like with the Huntress, Helena. He was not very happy with Oliver being with her, considering the fact that she is a killer. Had Diggle not been there, what do you think would have happened with Oliver and Helena?
I think she would have became like his kind of sidekick, and they would have just had absolutely no morals and would have probably done a lot more killing. And I think if he hadn't had Diggle from episode 4, I think Oliver would have just continued to just kill these bad guys instead of maybe taking away the money, capturing them, leaving them for the police, and would have just put his own vendetta in front.
Yeah, there was a lot of, with Helena, she was very like that, like Oliver was at the start. And I think Oliver tried to act as a Diggle, but he didn't really succeed, did he?
No, not really.
Yeah. Okay. One of the main things that we saw, obviously, on the present day was Malcolm Merlyn and the Dark Archer. What did you think of that storyline?
I really enjoyed John Barrowman in the series. I think he's a very strong addition, playing a very different character than what we usually see him on TV. A very dark and mysterious side, and obviously spoilers for the finale, but is he alive, is he not alive? Will we get to see him again next season? And personally, I'd love to see him back in some way or form. He's a very strong character, a very kind of father figure to Tommy, in the worst possible sense. But he was a very strong individual and was a very nice villain for the first season, the open-up season. And it was a very human villain as well, with the links to Tommy and a history with Oliver and with Moira. The series needed that kind of tie, familyness sort of thing in the series as a bad guy.
Yeah, it was quite good that you had someone that connected to Oliver, so that when it did come to having to kill him, it was one of those things where you think, can I really kill him? Is what you must have thought.
Especially when in the end of the second last episode, I think it was, even when John Barrowman grabbed him, he just went, oh no. As in, yes, he's willing to kill, but when he realised it was Oliver, it was different, it was family. Oliver was kind of like an extended son to him.
Yeah, this is someone who is the son of someone he's known for a long time, and his son is Oliver's best friend. So it's a very difficult situation for what he could have done there.
And obviously they kind of played on the fact that there's something between him and Moira, which I think they could have probably developed more, or maybe developed more next season, as if there was some sort of history between them.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if we're going to see much of either of them next season. Obviously, Malcolm could be dead, and Moira is likely to go to prison. But that would have been a very interesting storyline to go down.
Maybe they'll share a cell next season.
Maybe. But as I think as Mark Guggenheim said, it's a good job that this show has flashbacks as well.
John Barrowman on the island, maybe.
That could be an interesting twist. Now, yeah. Another thing that we saw was addition of Roy. Cory. What do you think? What his influence was on the season?
I think when we first saw him in, I think it's episode 15, Dodger. I wasn't really that fussed, but I guess he wasn't really featured too heavily in that. But over the course of how the season's gone on, I think it's developed quite nicely, and I think you can almost see a reflection of Dig and Oliver, in a sense, within Thea and Roy, in the way that Thea's been sort of encouraging him to see better in himself. And, for example, towards the end of the season, particularly the finale, when he goes and saves the old guy from those thugs. And I think we can sort of see it's definitely heading towards him teaming up with Ollie towards the end. We'll get there in the end. I mean, we had the foregrounding in Salvation when he got taken by the Saviour. It'd be interesting how it plays out. And I've definitely become more of a fan of that as it's gone on.
Yeah, I mean, I think before Salvation he was very selfish and he just didn't care about anyone. But I think being captured and on the brink of death and then being saved by Oliver was quite a turning point for him.
Yeah, definitely. That's opened his eyes up, and yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out in season 2.
Do you not think they've brought him in a bit too early? You know, it's a very big ensemble cast if you think about it, and could they've maybe waited till next season to bring him in? I just think they've brought him in to keep Thea's storyline going, as if they were struggling to kind of keep Thea in the mix.
It's a difficult one, but I think it's nice that they've brought these characters in because that means that they can get to go with more storylines for them. For further seasons, they might end up bringing them in, as you say, next season, and there'll be less storylines, less time to tell the storylines for them.
With these type of shows where they have such a large ensemble cast like Lost, you kind of have every week's focused on a different character, or if they try and fit all of them into one, it usually gets a bit jumbled. But he's been an interesting character, and I think they kind of took the focus away from Thea, nicknamed Speedy as well, and focus more on Roy, which is a shame because I like Thea's character and she seems like she's just been pushed to the side. But they have kind of started hinting that she may have more of an involvement in this vigilante side in the final episode as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm very certain that Roy will join up with Oliver, and I think that Thea will too, because of obviously all the hints that have been dropped. But I think it would make nice for Oliver and Thea to be working together as well.
Do you not think too many people know his secret?
That's something that I've been saying ever since Tommy found out, that it's too many people now, because it was 16 episodes and I think it was 5 people had already found out. And there comes a point where there is too many people in Starling City that know that he is the vigilante.
Do you think that's one reason why they killed off Tommy? Too many people knowing his secret?
That could be an interesting reason. But I think also it's going to produce a lot of problems between Oliver and Laurel for next season as well. Because it'll be very reminiscent for Laurel, I think, of when Oliver disappeared to the island, except this time she knows that Tommy's not coming back.
Well, I read an interview with the executive producer, and he was saying Tommy made the most sense because Tommy's the one character that has a connection with every single character, with Thea, with Oliver, and they just all seem to have some sort of connection to Tommy, and he was kind of like a central kind of character where everyone's going to be kind of affected by his death.
Yeah, definitely. I'm just thinking about Detective Lance as well. He's a very interesting character throughout the season. Cory, what did you take on him this season?
Well, I think it's, if you see like Jim Gordon in the Batman films, I think that's the direction that could be heading. I think at times it's been a little bit contradictory because sort of he seemed at times to warm to the hood, realise he's doing some good, but then episode or 2 down the line he's been after him again. But I think almost that could bring a bit of realism towards it because he's a cop, all his life he's known about upholding the law in a certain manner. This new guy comes along, he's doing things differently, and maybe he's starting to see it's working, but at the same time he's come to get used to this way of doing things, and it's taking some of that into. But I quite like Lance's character. I think he's started to develop quite nicely towards the end, but hopefully from now on we might see a bit more of a partnership between him and Arrow, because I think it could add to it somewhat, but obviously I don't think he should find out he shouldn't find out Ollie's secret identity. I think like the way that he just knows him as the Hood works quite nicely as a partnership.
I think I agree there. I don't want Lance finding out Oliver, but if he was to, I'm interested to see how he would react, because it seems to me that he doesn't really like the Hood as much as he does try and help save the city, and he realised that in the finale. And he doesn't like Oliver either. So if he finds out that both people are the same one, I don't see what he could say about that.
I think he actually prefers the Hood more then he prefers Oliver because at least he knows the Hood is trying to do some good, whereas Oliver just seems to be this playboy that ruined his family.
You say that, but it was in episode 22, he said to Laurel about how he thinks that Oliver's changed since he got back from the island, which is obviously very true. So I don't know if he's changed his opinion entirely on Oliver or not, or it's just kind of a lapse in judgment.
It'd be interesting to see how that plays out, and if obviously Laurel and Oliver are going to kind of develop their relationship. But obviously Tommy dying, I think, is going to put the guilt trip on her, because Oliver wasn't the one that saved her.
Yeah, that's a very good point. Okay, on to that, I think we should go on to the island scenes. One thing I've really liked about the island scenes this year is that everything flows into every episode. You had, from the very first episode, everything just consistently went episode to episode. All of it was connected to the last one.
Yeah, it's been a nice little continuation. It's been a pain for people that might have missed the episode, but I'd say the island scenes have actually been more interesting than the city scenes. Just looking at how Oliver's developed from this playboy, very immature, to slowly building up to being this strong, tough, and obviously having some sort of skill with an arrow that we've finally got to see in the finale. So it's been a very interesting side showing how this character's developed, more so than the city.
One of the really good things about the island was that whenever they had an island scene, it was all very much in tandem with what was going on in the present day, so you could compare back then to what it is now.
Yeah, the kind of conflicts Oliver was going through, kind of mirroring the conflicts he was going through in the city, and how on island he usually made the wrong choice, and that's obviously influenced him making the right choice in the city, showing how over the years he's developed and grown as a person.
That's provided a very good basis for it. There's obviously been a couple of people that he's met on the island, first of which being Slade. Cory, how do you think that Slade's going to feature into any sort of further on in the series?
Well, I mean, I know, obviously, from the comics or whatever, Slade Wilson is Deathstroke, and we saw, I think it was in the pilot, there was Deathstroke's mask, I think it was just on the front of the beach with an arrow through the eye, and obviously we didn't see Ollie kill off Wintergreen, so presumably that could be Slade's, which will be interesting to see if he does go down that dark path. But I think one of the things is they're working quite well as a team, I feel, and I can't see sort of what's going to be the spark for him going down there. I think it was the Odyssey, the island-centric episodes. He talked about betrayal, and it seems Slade doesn't forgive betrayal. So perhaps that's what we could see. He feels like Ollie betrays him in some way, and that could turn them against each other. I could definitely see him showing up in the present day at some stage, though.
Well, obviously when Oliver got rescued at the start, it was just Oliver. So it makes you wonder, where did Slade and Shadow both end up? I mean, did they get rescued beforehand, or were they still on the island? Did Oliver leave them alone?
Well, Shadow's fate's still up in the air right now, isn't it? Am I right in thinking they didn't reveal her being alive? They only showed Slade in the finale.
Yeah, no, they did. They had Oliver was talking to Slade, and Slade.
Oh
was
yeah, that's right.
Shadow,
yes, and he shot that arrow.
and Oliver killed Fires. Yeah.
Totally forgot that scene for some reason.
So have a lot of people actually. Yeah. So you were saying?
Yeah, but I think it's going to be interesting to see if Slade is bitter towards, obviously, Oliver, because he's just blew their one chance of getting off the island, and Slade has that kind of temperament where he could go either way. He's a man just out for himself. He's not really a team player, in a sense. Not anymore.
I don't know, I think these last couple of episodes, I think he's definitely become trying to care about Oliver and Shadow at the same as well. I think if Oliver had let Fires kill Shadow, so that him and Slade could escape, I'm not sure whether Slade would have been able to live with that. I don't think Oliver definitely wouldn't have been able to, but I don't know if Slade would have been able to, because Slade obviously had this friendship with Yale Faye before, and so maybe this has come to Shadow as well.
Do you think that maybe Oliver will help them to escape and he ends up trapped on the island, and then them two reappear in the city in Season 2?
It's certainly a possibility. I don't know if it'll be Season 2, but it's certainly a possibility, because Oliver was the only one on the island when he got rescued. And I think after what happened to him on the island and the connections we've seen him make in Season 1, I don't think he would intentionally leave Slade or Shadow behind when he got rescued back in the first episode.
Yeah, it'd be very interesting to see how that dynamic, the kind of hint towards a love triangle as well between the three of them, which could obviously lead to a lot of conflict and behaviour, and maybe that's how the other two disappear and leave Oliver. Maybe they choose each other and choose to leave Oliver on the island.
Yeah, I think Oliver might show some resentment towards them for that, and it might be one of the things that has made him quite aggressive as well.
So it'll be interesting to see if we're going to get more of the training sort of that Shadow started with the bow and arrow. Obviously Oliver's now shown his potential in the finale, and it'll be interesting to see how they develop him. Are they going to actually jump maybe a few months in the future? Because if there's nobody currently on the island for conflict, maybe we're going to jump a few months ahead of island time, showing where he's now fully trained and better with an arrow.
Yeah, that would be quite interesting, but the thing I really liked about the island is that whereas in the city it's all kind of gone over a 9-10 month period, the island has been over a couple of months maybe. I mean, the gap between episode 20 and obviously skipping at episode 21, but between 20 and 23, it was what, a day, if that? And I really liked how they've all connected episode to episode in together. Cory?
Yeah. I think particularly with the island scenes, it makes more sense to do it in that way. I think because you want to see the development of Oliver's character and really see how he becomes Arrow from that island time, and by doing it quite continuously, you see his struggles as he goes. I think also just a little bit of a shout out to Stephen Amell's acting, because the way he is on the island, he doesn't have that sort of same intimidating presence as he does in the present day. I think he pulls it off quite nicely. He's sort of got that lost kid look on the island. In the present day, obviously, he's badass Oliver. But yeah, I think he sort of pulled that off quite well and quite convincingly.
Yeah, I think that may change now that he's killed Fires and he's now kind of taken control. Him, Slade and Shadow have taken control. But yeah, I think it's very interesting, and that's, I think, where I have to disagree with what CJ said, that I hope they don't do a time jump, because we already know how well Oliver's trained in the present day, whereas it's nice to see how he gets trained and the things that he goes through to get to this point that he is now.
Do you think we'll see some of the, was it the Russians that Oliver has some sort of connection to? Do you think we'll start seeing some of their soldiers or acquaintances appearing on the island in Season 2?
It's definitely a possibility, because obviously there is no villain left, and it'll be interesting to see if maybe the Russians were people that woman in episode 22 hired. We saw a little bit of her legs, but she was the one that hired Fires to take out the flight and disable China's economy. So it'll be interesting to see who else she hires to go onto the island, and obviously she knows about Shadow, Slade and Oliver. So what could happen with them, I don't quite know yet.
I'd definitely say it's the more interesting story compared to, well, for me anyway, the island's been the most interesting compared to the city stories, because it is that consistent kind of linear approach, seeing how Oliver's developed, what sort of problems has he had on the island. Maybe it's just because I love the TV show Lost so much, I prefer Trapped on an Island, but if I start seeing smoke flying about, I might start getting a bit worried.
Yeah, I have liked the island because of that. The one thing I've had a problem with in the present day is that they keep getting rid of characters quite simply Count, I thought he was only going to be in one episode, he was in two, but they still kind of basically ended his story. They did the same in episode 13. The Huntress is obviously still kind of up in the air, can come back, but it was these really good villains in the present day where you think you could extend these storylines over a number of episodes, number of seasons to come back, but you've kind of ended their storyline in one episode. Whereas on the island, it's all continuing on, and the Fire storyline went on the whole season.
Do you think they might be very creative at the end of season 2 and put Oliver back on the island? Say someone captures him and puts him back on it?
I think it's unlikely, because I don't think you'd have to have a very strong person. I only think the only person could be Slade or Malcolm, if Malcolm's still alive, are the only kind of people that would be able to do that. Because I think present day Oliver's very strong, and especially with the death of Tommy, it could be a trigger, make him stronger, it'll be no one is able to defeat him or anything.
Do you think you'll start pulling away from Laurel because of the death of Tommy? I know we're kind of going off island here, but...
Yeah, it's a definite possibility. As I said, it'll probably remind her of when Oliver went to the island, and she'll know for a fact this time that Tommy isn't coming back. So and obviously Oliver is in the same situation. So it could be very difficult for both of them.
But I think we're going to see Malcolm on the island at some point. I've just got this funny feeling he is going to appear, and maybe that's where he's done some of his training or something like that, because I think the timelines when he was on the island, we don't know what Malcolm's been up to, and he's been working on this giant plan, but he was an archer before Oliver ended up on the island, is that right? It was straight after his wife died, he went off and trained, and then that was years later, then Oliver ended up on the island.
Yeah, I mean, he told Tommy that it was Nanda Parbat. But, yeah, he could have gone to the island, but I don't know. I think if he had gone to the island as Malcolm, he'd have had to gone as... He couldn't have gone as Malcolm, because Oliver would have remembered him if he had encountered him.
But there's always that kind of hood and disguise and things like that. Maybe that is the inspiration for Oliver's current costume.
Yeah, Cory, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I pretty much agree with what you guys are saying there. There was one point I was wondering about. I mean, obviously we had one episode in this season where it was completely on the island, and the little sort of, well, the present day scenes filled the time slot of the flashbacks. Would you guys like to see more episodes like that in season 2?
Yeah, I quite like that. It was... Because that one was the one with a lot of... Oliver had met Slade in that episode, or the previous episode, and they did a lot of training in that episode, didn't they?
Yeah.
And it was one of the things that really kind of showed how he's become from, as CJ said, this rich playboy and just doesn't care about anyone, to what he is now.
Would you just like to see maybe... just as a one-off, a jump forward where Oliver's on the island by himself?
What, you mean like a lost flash forward?
Yeah, kind of like literally jumping up to the point just before he left the island, so that rather than having a linear island story, we'll get it scattered across different times now.
I would say no, because I like the way that this is going, this current consistent linear storyline on the island, and I think if you were to jump forward 4 years or however long into the island we've got already, if you were to jump that far forward, it would be very difficult to go back to it, because you would know, if Slade and Shadow aren't there, you would know that they've either got off the island or they've died.
Yeah, good point. I do like the linear format, but I think it'd be interesting to see some of the other problems that he's had, rather than having to wait like another 3 seasons to find out exactly what he went through.
Yeah, I mean, they said that Mark Guggenheim says that they've got 4 seasons of Island planned, so you could have to wait a long time for all these kind of, like, a year or two before present day.
Oh, I hate it when they do that.
Okay. I think that brings us nicely. I think we should discuss the finale now. But I thought the finale was absolutely brilliant. I absolutely loved it.
Oh well, now Gordon, short and sweet. Next section. No, I think it was a very, very strong first season finale, and I think, in all fairness to Arrow, they needed that to kind of get themselves off the mark, to say, look, this is our show, this is how the whole season has been, and it's built up to this big, giant confrontation where a lot of the times during the episode, you didn't know which character was going to be alive. It was obvious one of them was going to die, but you weren't expecting it to be Tommy. You didn't expect Malcolm to stay alive. You didn't expect Moira to be getting arrested. You didn't expect Roy and Thea to be in the thick of it. It was a very action-packed episode, which, as a fan, you didn't know which direction it was going to take and who was going to survive, whether Lance was going to be trapped in the subway section. It was a very clever episode, and it, like I said, it had you on the edge of your seat the full time thinking, where are they going to take this show? Which is what you wanted.
Cory, what did you think?
Yeah, I mean, echo what you guys are saying. It just sort of kept you on the edge of your seat, really. I mean, I think it built it up quite well over the course of the season, and it did need to go out with a bang. I also thought it was quite bold I mean, it seems Malcolm is most likely dead and Fires is dead. I thought it was quite bold to kill off the two big bads in the present day and on the island.
Yeah, and I think also not only was it killing off the two big baddies, I think, as CJ said a little while ago, killing off Tommy as well was quite a big thing, because he was connected to every single character in the storyline, and it's going to affect, his death is going to affect every single one of them.
And obviously it was a nice setup for Season 2 as well, to see how these characters are going to move forward, how's Thea going to react, because Thea's obviously had a thing for Tommy. She's fallen in love with Roy. Roy's starting to kind of stand up and become his own little vigilante, so as well as kind of closing off the story, it's opened up a lot for Season 2.
Yeah, and also on the boldness, I think it was quite good that they did actually have the earthquake and destroy half the city, because there are a lot of shows that kind of aren't that bold. You got to 5 minutes from the end, as we did, and Lance sailed the bomb, and that was it. And then you find another way to kill someone off in the last few minutes. I think it was quite good that they decided to go that route of destroying the city and kind of ruin everything, basically.
Was it only half the city, the east side or something, it managed to get demolished?
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah.
So obviously the main focus is going to be maybe the Queens moving forward, using their money to kind of help the city in a sense, and maybe this is how Queen can maybe buy out Merlin Industries, because obviously they've lost Tommy. Malcolm Merlin's obviously not going to be running the show anymore, so maybe Queen Industries will buy that company and use some of their kind of businesses and things like that to redevelop what's it called? Is it the Glades? I don't know why I'm going blank today. Yeah, the Glades, and help them rebuild the Glades.
Yeah, I think that Oliver's kind of his vigilante side is going to definitely be wanting to do that. Definitely. One of the things that we saw get destroyed was CNRI, which was an interesting twist, obviously, where Tommy died, Laurel almost died. Laurel is now going to have nowhere to work, so what do you think she'll have to get on to doing to next season, Cory?
Well, I think she seems to have this determination to do what's right, look after people. I mean, obviously we saw that from the finale, because she'd been warned by Oliver and her dad not to go to CNRI, but she went anyway. So I'm guessing she's going to still try helping people in that respect, but I can almost see her being a bit tougher. Like, the death of Tommy, I think, might close her down a little bit. Sort of, she'll put up some shields. I think she'll push Oliver away. She'll perhaps be conflicted about that, because I think they said it in one of the interviews, or I might have just read it somewhere. Obviously, she went off and slept with Oliver, but Tommy was the one saving her. Where was Ollie? Did she choose the right guy, for example? I'm guessing she's probably going to be quite conflicted, but I think she'll stick to her guns and still try and do some good, but I'm not quite sure what that's going to come in the form as, but I think that's the sign of a good show if you don't know what's coming.
Do you think she'll take the manager position? There's a job going, obviously.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, I mean, I've totally forgot what I was going to say now. Sorry, CJ. Was that at Merlin Industries, you mean?
No, at the club. Tommy obviously quit it. I don't know if Oliver's got a new job, so obviously as a starting point she could be working at the club, and maybe Oliver like that so he can keep an eye on her, and it kind of keeps her more central in the plot as well.
I'll come back to what I was going to say because I've forgotten it. But at the club, one of the things was Felicity was obviously down there and there's a little bit of damage. How much has Verdant been damaged by the earthquake? We don't know.
Yeah, that's very true, actually. I mean, I think she said the damage is contained to the east side, but I'm guessing it hasn't got away completely free from it all.
In all fairness, it was a bit of a tip to start with. It was an old factory, so they probably wouldn't even notice.
No, but I mean, on the top side where the club was, it was, as we saw in episode 17, and all the rest of the episodes afterwards, where we actually saw the main level of the club, it was very well done up there. And I think that it could be interesting to see how much that had been damaged, because if Oliver does need to fix it, is he going to be able to keep, if he does need people to come in to fix it, is he going to be able to keep the Arrow stuff below away from anyone seeing it?
Yeah, I mean, definitely a dilemma for him.
I mean, in episode 19, Tommy was very good at somehow getting rid of all the stuff down there before Lance came along with the warrant to search the place. But I don't know what Oliver can do if the club is that badly damaged. Maybe he'd have to close it down, but then it would be where, as he said in a few episodes when he was making it, the club, he needs a place where he can have an alibi for where Oliver spends his nights.
Could you not use the earthquake as an excuse to maybe rebuild certain areas?
What do you mean?
So now that obviously the earthquake has hit, he could claim that there's certain damage in certain areas of the club, and he could make maybe a more secure room in the basement, so that way it's tougher for people to kind of get in there. So obviously you'll have workmen in, making the place better, and people won't realise, as well as fixing the club, he's actually making a secure area for Diggle and Felicity to hide out. And no one will question why he has workmen in that area, because they'll just think it's earthquake damage.
That is a very good point, actually.
A bit like Batman Begins.
Yeah, that could work nicely.
Okay. One of the things we saw in the finale, I think we've touched on this a little bit, was the fact that Roy and Thea sort of got back together. We saw the breakup in the penultimate episode, or supposed breakup, and then they kind of got back together by reuniting. Where do we think? Do we think they've got back together, or it's kind of a, like, as they started off, which was kind of run into each other, and they're like a relationship, but they're not really?
It's a tough call, really. I think probably even the writers haven't fully decided on that one.
Cory, what do you think on that?
Well, I think it's sort of two teenagers perhaps thinking they're in love. It's that kind of relationship to me, I think. I think the way things panned out might have shown them what they mean to each other. I think I could see them back together now, actually. If it's going to go one way or the other, I'd say they'd get back together.
Yeah, I definitely agree there.
Talking about relationships, what about Felicity and Oliver as well? Felicity, I think it was actually in the second last episode when they were in the elevator, kind of made a bit of a oopsie comment, hinting how much she likes him, and Oliver's kind of brushed it aside. Do you think Oliver might start to develop feelings for her, or is there going to be a love triangle between her, Oliver, and Felicity? Because I can't see it right now. I just don't see Oliver liking Felicity in that way.
No, neither. It was quite a funny thing where she was like, I can imagine you saying that under different circumstances, where he asked her to put his arm around her. But it was, I don't think so. I think it's going to be a stretch for him to go be with Laurel after Tommy's death. So to be with Felicity could be very difficult.
Oh, here's an idea, same we were talking about earlier. What if Shadow got off the island and she appears halfway through the season, and that's the love triangle?
The love triangle, what? The love triangle being Laurel, Shadow, and Oliver?
Yeah.
Could you make that a quartet, being Felicity in there as well?
And then you can throw in Slade, and then you've got, like, the full season sorted.
Yeah. It's a very interesting question. Because I don't know if Laurel or Oliver are going to be ready for the relationships after Tommy's death. And I think even after the trauma of what happened, I'm not sure that Felicity will be in a state either. Because obviously did she meet Tommy? I can't remember. But obviously she'll take it hard as well. And the earthquake, as you saw in the finale, it really scared her. And she was terrified. And so it'll be interesting to see how that affects her and coming in next season.
Is, just throwing an idea out, is Diggle's sister-in-law, girlfriend, relationship, special friend, is her cafe also located in the Glades?
Well, I would assume so.
Yeah, I think it was, actually.
We didn't see anything about her in the finale, did we?
No.
Because you would have thought that would be the first thing Diggle would have been concerned about, unless she isn't in the Glades, but you'd think Diggle, he cares about her so much, first thing would be on the phone or kind of checking up on her in some way or form.
Well, we did see, obviously, when the earthquake went off, he had a knife thrown at him by Malcolm, and when Oliver went off to go save Laurel, maybe that's what Diggle was doing, because we didn't see Diggle after that, and that was about 3-4 minutes. So maybe that's what Diggle was doing while Oliver was off.
Maybe.
One thing that I did notice in the finale that really kind of confused me was they brought back Laurel's friend from CRRI, whose brother got killed off in episode 10. I can't remember her name now, but she said she was in it when they saw Moira interview, news conference type thing, selling people to get out the Glades. And you saw her when the earthquake actually started, and then you saw her run outside the building and shout for Laurel to come out, and that was it. And I really couldn't see the point of her being in the episode.
Yeah, I couldn't really either, to be honest. It just seemed to make up the numbers and get everybody back.
Yeah, I mean, it was nice to have her back, and obviously kind of a sort of finale, big reunion type thing. But it is sort of pointless. You'd have thought that had they brought her back, as they did, they could have given her a much bigger role and something to actually do in the episode.
Maybe it's just for consistency to maybe say she still works here, and you're going to see this character floating around as a kind of extra in future episodes as well.
But then on to that point, CNRI is where she works as well, so what's she going to do? Are we going to see her again? Because
I think just because the building's been damaged, I don't think the business will stop. Obviously, they'll claim it on the insurance and things like that, and maybe that's going to be the starting arc for them trying to build back up this law firm, and maybe they'll just relocate, and Laurel will still be doing the same job, but maybe she'll be working from home.
Yeah, that is an interesting viewpoint. Right, so we're now going to take some time talking about the ratings that the season got. CJ has the ratings for the UK, the first episode here in the UK, but we're going to have to go on the US ratings after that. So CJ, what were they for the UK?
For the UK, it opened up pretty well. I was just actually found some of the ratings for the future episodes, but it was Sky Ones were the #1 UK shows for this year, and it was also #1 for Canada, just to throw that in. But for Sky, it was It delivered a 1.54 rating with a 3.6 share, but they kind of put that in kind of more technical terms. It was about 1 million viewers.
That is, considering the US has a lot more people than we do, that's pretty impressive. The thing I've got here is that the first episode in the US got 4.3 million viewers, which, for an opening episode on a very struggling network out there, that is quite a good opening episode.
Well, Arrow in America was pretty much consistent all the way through the season at around 3 million, if I remember right. It fluctuated thereabouts, but consistently it was about the 3 million mark, which is what you'd expect for a CW show in its first season like this as well.
Yeah, I mean, I've got them here, but surprisingly, and I'm really surprised about this, the lowest amount of viewers that the season got was episode 22. And I'm considering how big this episode was meant to be and how big it actually was, I was really shocked at that.
The penultimate episode.
Yeah.
Yeah, that could have just been because, obviously, it's around finale time. Those 2 weeks when Arrow was showing, it was finale time for a lot of shows, bigger shows, and they probably would have lost a few viewers if they were watching other channels during that time. So that could be one of the reasons why it hasn't been as big a viewing compared to some of the others. And obviously that doesn't take into account DVR and things like that as well.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the finale got the third, if I'm right in thinking, the third lowest amount of viewers in the season. And it's something that really shocks me, that these big episodes, the best ones of the season, and it's lowest rated.
I'm just trying to pull up whatever TV shows are on at roughly the same time as Arrow so I can tell you possibly why. So, for example, Elementary was on at that time.
Thursday.
Oh, sorry, yes, it is Thursday. I'm looking at the wrong list. Right, you had Supernatural, which is on the same channel, which should have helped in with the lead-in, but it didn't.
Yeah, that should have.
Modern Family wasn't on its final episode when the Arrow finale was on. Criminal Minds wasn't on its final episode. There was
airs after, but yeah, okay.
There was no finales on at the same time as the Arrow finale. That could have affected it.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I'm saying. I mean, some of these shows, like you just named, Criminal Minds, that's out on an hour after Arrow, and Supernatural as well on the same network, that should help. But you would think that because none of these big finale shows, any of these big shows were airing at the same time as Arrow, you'd think that would definitely help the ratings.
Yeah, it's very interesting why it's dropped. I kind of think, unless there's some sort of sporting event across in America.
I don't think there was.
Maybe the viewership's dropped slightly. Who knows? But again, if you think we're talking about it's actually the lowest for the season, when you look at it overall though, it only dropped by, say, 0.2 or 0.3 of viewers compared to the previous episodes, because it was roughly about 2.9, say, all the way through the series if you average it out.
Yeah.
So 2.7, 2.8 isn't too much of a drop for that show if you think about it.
No, and when you compare it with other shows on that network, it is one of the best rated shows on the network.
Especially for the type of show that it is, because certain superhero TV shows don't always succeed. And we've had a lot of shows trying it with the superhero kind of theme, and they've just failed straight out.
And I think that what they've done here is that they've changed it up a little bit with the flashbacks and all the different things that they've done, and it's really helped out the network and the ratings, and that's why it's so popular. Yeah.
I'm just trying to read up on some of the reasons why it might be dropped, but it says that usually this happens in April anyway. Now, there was a Voice special on, and an American Idol on as well.
I was just thinking that.
And I think that's cut into Arrow, so there was a Voice special on during the time Arrow was on.
But if you compare it with some of the other shows on the CW3, Nikita, for example, that's struggling to get 1 million viewers every week. And then you look at Arrow and you think it's getting 3 million viewers per week, roughly. You shouldn't really complain that much. It's doing quite well, and it got renewed back in, what was it, mid-February?
Yeah.
Yeah. So the ratings are obviously good enough for that to happen.
And it hits its demographic really well, which is obviously the 18 to 30s and 18-49, so it's hitting its target audience exactly how it should be. So it just needs to keep that going. I can see this lasting another 3-4 seasons, as long as they keep consistent like they have been.
And if it does last that 3-4 seasons, you'll get to see those island scenes.
Finally.
Okay. Yeah, I don't think there's really much more we can talk about ratings.
Yeah, I'm trying to pull up some of the UK ratings, but I'm not having much joy. When it comes to UK ratings, if it's Sky and stuff, Sky don't really publicise it that much.
Right, we're now going to go on to what we think and hope will happen in Season 2. So, Cory, do you want to start? What do you hope for Season 2? I mean, in the city. What do you hope in the city?
I think they've said there's going to be a time jump, so I'm presuming the Glades will be on the way to get rebuilt and stuff. I also saw another thing, I think it was an interview actually with Stephen Amell, where he said that Oliver's in a place where he doesn't really want to be the vigilante anymore. So I think it's going to be interesting to see what makes him carry on, what makes him want to still do what he does. I guess sort of see the transition to hero a little bit more. I think Shadow and Slade showing up in the present day could be quite interesting, but I could only see that coming towards the end of the season, really. And I guess some sort of resolution to Roy and Theo, perhaps, or some bigger development, because there's probably only so long they can drag it out, him looking for the hoods and not finding him. So, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, just go back to Oliver not being wanted to be the vigilante. We saw in episode 22 where Oliver said to Diggle about how Merlin's plan, the undertaking, and why he returned from the Eye of the Stop, is why he fought all those years to survive and get back. It's because he wanted to stop this. Now that he has tried to stop this and failed and lost his best friend, and obviously his mother has probably gone to jail, and all these things have happened, will he still want to be the vigilante? Is it going to, like, his failure, will it make him stop it, or will it just inspire him to be a better vigilante?
Maybe we'll get introduced to a big bad that's going to push Oliver to go back into being the vigilante. So the first few episodes, it might be him kind of toying with the idea, and then obviously something major is going to happen, which is going to push him forward.
Yeah, I mean, Mark Guggenheim said that there's going to be 2 big bads in Season 2, so I'm not sure whether that'll be a big bad on the island, and then another one in the city, or it'll be 2 in the city, or 2 on the island, one of them suddenly appears in present day, that kind of thing. There's a lot of roads they can take with two big bads.
Do you think we'll see some returning old enemies, like Deadshot maybe having more of a big effect on the season and the count?
Yeah, I can definitely see Deadshot coming back, because obviously Diggle has got this big thing, obviously, against him for killing his brother. Okay, yeah, Diggle's obviously got this huge thing against him for killing his brother, so it'll be interesting to see where they bring it back into it. I was really happy, actually, that once episode 20 got out of the way, and Oliver didn't help Diggle track down Deadshot. I'm glad they didn't even mention Deadshot in the last 3 episodes, obviously apart from Diggle and Oliver repairing the friendship. I'm glad they didn't mention it, because that way it just got to prioritise what those last couple of episodes were, and then they can bring it back at some point in Season 2.
If I had to make a prediction, and I'm probably way off, but if I had to predict what would happen in the mid-season finale, I've got a funny feeling Laurel's sister is going to reappear, so Oliver and Laurel are going to get to the point where they're just about to get back together, and then the sister reappears right at the very end. I can just see that happening.
Now you've said it, you can see it happening, but I don't think I'd like it. Because we went through the stage after Dead to Rights where Laurel, her mother, and Detective Lance are all looking. Dina thinks that Sarah is still alive, and then they find the woman who actually was in the photo and it's not her. And it was kind of a dragged-on storyline. It was just a way to get her involved, I think, for those 2 episodes, and it was frustrating, really.
But with not having the actual sister there physically, could it not open up some interesting storylines?
Yeah, I think it could. But it is the prospect of actually having her back that's difficult for me. Because she went down on the island.
Maybe she married Slade.
Well, maybe, but then what would have left Shadow? I think Shadow might have had a say in that.
Maybe Shadow, her and Slade all got married, and that's where they've all been hiding, on a separate island, so we're nice and happy.
I think that's a bit unrealistic now.
Yeah, true. I like my silly theories.
But I mean, if Sarah did survive the crash in a really far-fetched idea that she did survive, how did she get to anywhere? Where did she get to? And what has she been doing for these last 6 years? I would take it at the end of season 1. And if she's obviously still wherever she is, like if she maybe found an island like Oliver did, how is she going to get back?
Maybe that's how the Russians get involved. So maybe she ends up on a different section of the island. She meets the Russians, but she has some sort of, your cliché TV amnesia, and certain things start coming back to her, so she hunts down Laurel.
Hey, that's what my next point was going to be. I mean, if she has found an island, how does she get back? And if she has got back already, before Oliver, or in the time that we've seen in the last year, that Oliver has been back, why has she not gone and found Lance, or Laurel, or Oliver, or anyone? I don't understand that.
Well, I always live by the theory, if you don't actually physically see them die, they're not dead on a TV show.
Can I just say that in 24's Tony Almeida case, even when you do see them die, they're still not dead.
Yeah, but that's 24. That's even coming back soon, which is going to be great. I know that's slightly off topic, but it's Tony Almeida. You could keep shooting him and he'll still keep coming back. Just like Jack Bauer. Jack Bauer will never die. And never goes to the toilet.
Yeah, a little bit off topic, but anyway. But yeah, I mean, I agree with the theory that if you don't see them die, then there is always the possibility that they can come back. But I think with Sarah, it's a very difficult idea for me to grasp that she has managed to survive these times. Because what Oliver said in the finale about this person that has unravelled from him being on the island is his true self, I don't think that Sarah would have even had that in her when the boat crashed. So that nothing would have brought it out because it's not there.
Or maybe we're just missing the obvious. We're talking about her coming back to the city when really she could be on the island because not that much time has passed by on the island, so she could still appear.
What, and you think that Oliver encountered her and then just hasn't told Laurel about it the whole first season?
Well, maybe something bad happens, like Slade kills her.
Yeah, maybe. But, I mean, I think if Oliver had run into Sarah on the island, I think he probably would have mentioned it back in episode 17 and 18.
But if she died really badly or was murdered, isn't it better just saying she died in the ship, which is a bit easier? They'd already expected that. They'd already mourned the fact she died in a boat. Why would you bring up those feelings saying, well, actually, she lived for a few weeks and then she was brutally murdered?
Yeah, the same as when Oliver eventually in the finale told his mum, that Robert survived the boat crash and they got to the life raft and he killed himself.
Exactly, so he wouldn't want to put Laurel through that pain again, and then obviously maybe he can, at the end of this season, he can then say that she actually survived, and every season he can tell a different character. For example, in season 3, we'll find out Diggle's brother wasn't dead, he was also on the island, and then obviously he killed himself, and then Oliver can tell him that. And that can be a theme every season.
I think there may be a slight flaw in the Diggle plan there, because Diggle isn't exactly known for leaving survivors, is he?
Well, you know, I don't write the TV shows, but I'm sure the writers have probably considered it in some way or form.
Yeah. Cory, what do you think of some of these theories?
Certainly interesting.
That's a polite way of saying rubbish.
Yeah. No, I think they're definitely interesting, and some of them, not all of them, but some of them could definitely be an exploration point.
Yeah, definitely.
At some point. Season 2. What? I know we've talked about this a little bit before, but Slay and Shadow, where could they be? Because, obviously, as Cory said earlier, we've seen at the start of this series the Deathstroke mask with an arrow. So maybe they killed Slade. Maybe that was Slade's mask, and they killed it, and Oliver killed him, or Shadow killed him. But if both of them are still alive, what has actually happened to them?
Ooh. I don't know. I think that maybe they're together, but as you mentioned, the mask obviously in the pilot had an arrow through it. So if I had to take a guess, I'd think that obviously Oliver and Shadow maybe had a thing. Slade didn't like it, and that's how Oliver and Slade ended up fighting. And am I right in thinking that the actor playing Slade is now a series regular next season?
Yeah.
And I don't know if the Selena Jade who played Shadow, I don't know if she was commissioned for a regular season. I'll look it up. Hang on. You keep talking.
So maybe Slade isn't just going to be on the island next season, because if he's set up as a series regular, I don't think they just have him on island flashbacks without Shadow being around as well. So
Yeah,
maybe he is
okay.
going to appear in the city, and maybe he could be one of the big bads that they've hinted at.
Yeah.
I mean, that's where I came back to about how they may have one big bad in one place, or maybe two in the one place, and one of them goes into the other side. And you see them on both. I'm just looking up about Selena Jade. I don't think she's been made a series regular yet. So yeah, I don't know what we're going to see of Shadow. I think we're definitely going to see her, and how she gets along with the two in next season.
And obviously she's not going to be in the best of states because she's just watched her father get shot in the head.
Yeah, and I think that's going to affect Oliver and Slade as well. I mean, Slade obviously had a connection with the Alpha before, and I think Oliver started to get a connection those first few episodes before the Alpha switched sides, and then it was all very confusing as to who he was with. It's definitely going to take a toll on all of them. And I think what we'll see is how they all react to that.
And obviously with Oliver just losing his father, he can relate with her, and they can maybe sit around a little campfire and talk about how much they miss their dads.
Yeah, I'm sure we're going to end up seeing a flashback before the island where Slade's dad gets killed as well.
Yeah.
On that theory. But as well as that, I think they can tie that in, as they have done all season. They can tie it into the city, especially in the first couple of episodes, where Oliver and Laurel and all the rest of the people in Star City are still mourning Tommy's loss. And all the losses that everyone else who didn't even know Tommy, or didn't personally know Tommy, the losses that they've all suffered from the earthquake as well, because obviously more people than Tommy and possibly Malcolm just died.
Well, Malcolm's going to be doing that TV cliche where he's going to blame Oliver for Tommy's death because he should have been there to save him.
Yeah, I mean, that was the one thing that I thought about the finale, that Malcolm was all, you don't know what you're prepared to sacrifice and I do, and I'm prepared to sacrifice everything, basically. And then Oliver said to his mum, I keep saying her mum, I don't know why, his mum, that he was prepared, he had to stop Merlin, whatever the cost. And I think that had either of them, in fact both of them, known that Tommy was going to be the one that would die, it makes me wonder as to whether either of them would have actually been able to uphold those statements.
That's interesting.
Yeah, because obviously, as much as Malcolm wanted to get revenge and everything for his wife's death, I think that had he, obviously, I don't know if he is dead or not, we'll come to that in a minute, but I don't think he would have wanted Tommy to suffer from all this, which is what he said to Tommy, that he closed Rebecca's clinic because he didn't want to see it get levelled when he levelled the city. And I think that kind of care for his family would have stopped him from doing it if he'd known that Tommy was going to be a death because of it. Do you think?
Possibly, yeah. Yeah, I'd agree with that, actually.
Yeah,
Cory?
yeah, I'm in agreement with that.
I think Oliver would be the same. He kind of went, very fearless. I'm prepared to lose anything. Diggle, I think when Diggle had the knife stuck in him, I think at that point he was starting to regret the statement. But luckily for him, Diggle wasn't too badly injured. But because Oliver's had this connection with Tommy for the whole of his life, I don't think he'd have been as fearless in trying to stop Malcolm.
But I think Oliver's more kind of happy with putting Diggle at risk because Diggle signed up for it and Diggle is willing and trained in those situations so can hold his own, and Diggle's chosen to be in the line of fire, whereas Tommy, well, I suppose you could say he chose to go into that building, but even so, he isn't trained in the same way Diggle is.
Yeah, and even though he did choose to go in that building, it wasn't because he wanted to be a hero. He did, but it wasn't kind of, I'm going to stop the earthquake. It was because he was trying to save the woman he loved. And it's a different kind of thing. It wasn't like Diggle trying to help out Oliver, trying to make sure that this doesn't all happen. It's him preventing the aftermath of it. And I think because of that, it was very different.
But I think Tommy dying did make the most sense for every character's kind of storyline and for the fact that it was somebody that knew Oliver's secret, and that as soon as Tommy found out the secret, I pretty much said he's not going to last the season.
Yeah, I didn't really think that he was going to die, but I did say to Cory the week before that Tommy, at a stretch, could die. And it was one of those things that I was going through all the characters and I thought, they could die, he could die, he won't. And then it came to Tommy, and you think, if it wasn't for the fact that he knew Oliver's secret, and the fact that he's so close to Laurel, and how Oliver and Laurel possibly getting back together, all this can all connect, he wouldn't really be at risk. If they hadn't broken up, Tommy and Laurel, and Tommy hadn't found out Oliver's secret, and none of this had happened, I don't think they would have killed off Tommy. Do you agree with that, guys?
Yeah. I think, well, obviously the writers have maybe been building it up for the season, building to that point. Again, obviously it's because it's such a large ensemble cast and they've put three new regulars in next season. It was obvious that they were going to kill off one or two people, and I think maybe with Moira going into prison, she might be dropping her series regular role to make room for some of the others like Felicity and Roy and Slade.
Yeah, I definitely agree there. And one thing that I did think about on the third time of watching the finale, I think, was that now that Moira's gone to prison, what's going to happen to Queen Consolidated? Is Oliver going to take over, or is he going to continue at the club? If Oliver does continue at the club, who is going to take over at Queen Consolidated?
Well, will it not be Walter? All he's done is divorced her, and he still is one of the main sort of CEOs of Queen Industries. He's just now divorced.
Yeah, but I mean, with Moira gone, would he still... I mean, obviously, I think he has a devotion to the company, and he enjoys working there. But do you think that after all that Moira's done, he'd want to be associated with it at all?
I don't know. Well, here's an interesting question for you. With Oliver no longer being the vigilante, in his sense he's done his father's mission, could maybe he be taking over Queen's Industries?
Yeah, that's what I was just going to say. I mean, but then I think if he was to do that, I don't think he'd be suited for the business type. I think Tommy was sort of, I think the turning point for Tommy becoming all of this business, I'm going to be part like my father, was after that he found out about Oliver, and he didn't want to be anywhere near Oliver because of everything that he does and all the fact that he kills people, and it's not nice. And he didn't know anything about his father being a baddie or anything. So it was kind of disassociating himself with the bad things that have happened. But if Oliver does go and, run the company at Queen Consolidated, it's associating him with the Queen kind of... People could, in theory, try and connect him to what Moira did. Do you think?
Yeah, that's a fair point to make.
Mm. And I mean, is Thea going to find a way of working at Queen Consolidated? Because she obviously, I don't know, I think obviously her stint at CNRI is probably over by the start of season 2. So what is she going to do?
Yeah, that's a good question, actually. I was just thinking of Queen Consolidates, like, if, like we say, Walter's not too keen on doing it anymore, Moira going to prison. I was wondering if, I'm not sure if she's really the type, but one of the people I could see stepping in there could be Felicity at a stretch, perhaps.
Yeah, that would be quite interesting to see someone like Felicity running the company. But I think on that, if Oliver was to continue with the Vigilante, it would be difficult for Felicity to do both.
Yes, true.
Which would be a problem, really.
Maybe Laurel will start running the business, because like we said, she's out of a job by the looks of it.
But then, as you said, it's not really... The business hasn't died, the building's just gone.
Yeah.
So maybe they'll try and rebuild it.
I think personally it would be Walter still running it. May not see him on screen, but Walter will be running Queen Industries, and maybe the new big bad will take over Merlin Industries.
But I think that would be a bit kind of repetitive.
Yeah.
Big bad run Merlin Industries for this season. You'd think that they bring something different in.
Maybe Wayne Enterprises will take it over.
Maybe. Right, what we're going to go on to next is talking about what our favourite things about the season was. So we'll start off with what our favourite episode was. So, Cory, what was your favourite episode of the season?
I think probably episode 16, Dead to Rights. I mean, the finale was very good, but I think out of that first sort of half of the season, that episode's mid-season finale, I just thought it flowed really brilliantly. Everything went from one thing into the next. I thought the fight scenes were really good. We got the big reveal of Tommy finding out in the end. Yeah, and I mean, it set things up nicely as we went into a bit of a break before we came back with episode 17.
And if I just want to add another thing into that, it also brought back Deadshot as well in that episode.
Yeah.
That was a real kind of benchmark where they can go, obviously, China White bringing Deadshot back into the mix with that eye patch. It brought back him as the paid assassin that he was back in episode 3. Okay. CJ?
Mine's actually going to be the pilot. I really enjoyed the pilot. The pilot just set it all up for me, all of the themes, the kind of way the episodes were going to be jumping back and forward from the island. And I'm usually a big fan of TV series pilots, and if the pilot's strong, it really sets it up for me for the rest of the season. And the only other episode which I kind of liked, and I cannot remember the name of it, is when Laurel is kidnapped at the end and Arrow works with Detective Lance in order to get her back, but I just cannot remember the name of the episode where it happens.
Betrayal?
Possibly Betrayal, yeah.
Yeah, because that was the one with David Anders, and it was where he figured out that Oliver had all these arrows in his thing, and then he figured out how many it was.
Yeah, and it's the first time he meets Slade in that episode as well, if I remember right.
Yeah, it was right at the end, I think, that the flashback came.
Yeah, but I think that's episode 13-ish, 12, 13, so that was another standout episode for me, which I thought was quite good, and seeing this other side of Lance, where he's actually willing to kill for his daughter, and it's actually Arrow that stops him to say, look, that's my job, you stay on the low side, I'll stretch it when I need to. Now, I really enjoyed that episode.
Mm. It was the point, another thing about that episode that I liked, was it was the point where Laurel was kidnapped by him, and Oliver was there as the vigilante, and he's sitting there with a hood, and then I'm sitting there thinking, is he going to reveal his hood? Not Oliver going to reveal his hood, but is he going to have his hood revealed? And then Laurel gets to see who he is, all the other people, all the bodyguards or whatever get to see who he is, and then it kind of comes into it that way. Someone else finds out that way. And I liked how they didn't do that. It was Lance came in and rescued them.
So what's your favourite?
Mine would have to be the finale. It was difficult because up until episode 21, quite blatantly my favourite was Dead to Rights. And the last two episodes kind of took over. Episode 22, when I watched it, that became my favourite, and then the finale overtook that when it came. I just really liked the way it was done. Everything was crucial to what happened in the storyline, and it was just, in general, really good.
Yeah, the finale was definitely a very, very strong episode, but that's what you kind of expect from finales. If finales cannot do the job, that there's going to be something wrong with the future of the show. The finales are meant to round up all of the answers, but then leave new questions, and if finales don't do that, they usually struggle when they come back. But the finale this year for Arrow will probably be one of the hardest episodes for them to top. They've really set themselves up now for season 2 to try and top that finale.
Yeah, I mean, it was definitely the best of the finales that I saw over the last couple of weeks. Definitely the best one by a long way. But yeah, it was really good in the sense that it set everything up. All the things we've had over season 1, it ended, and then everything that it's ended has just left new questions that you can just go off of.
For a first season show, though, I think it's been a very strong season. Yes, there has been a few episodes which didn't kind of get it right at times, but overall, it's been very, very strong and interesting to watch, and it's done a really good job for its first season.
On that point, what was the one you didn't like? You liked least? What episode was that?
I didn't like the first episode with the Huntress in.
Episode 7.
I didn't really enjoy that with her. I just thought it was kind of a bit too forced pairing them together, and I just didn't get into it as much as I could have.
See, I'm kind of different to you. I think I quite like that, because what it did is it set up this kind of conflicting person to be with Oliver. Sometimes she's good, and then sometimes she's bad, and then it's all sort of alternating, and Oliver can think that he can change her, and then it turns out that he can't, and then it's all these kind of things. Like in episode 17, when she came back, she basically got rid of McKenna out of the storyline, and I think without her, they needed to find a way to get back to Oliver, Tommy, and Laurel, I think. And the Huntress, obviously having been there previously, that set up a good way of doing that.
I don't think that actress was as good as she could have been. I think they could have got a stronger actress overall.
Yeah, see, I think Jessica Gale was quite good at it. I really liked the way that she portrayed it. But people had different opinions. Cory, what was your worst episode then?
I think I wasn't such a fan of episode 15. I think it was Dodger. I think it just felt a little bit jumbled to me. I don't know what it was. It sort of felt like, I think because they had obviously Joe Thief Dodger, I think Rory was introduced, I think they had Ollie dating McKenna, Dig dating his ex-sister-in-law. It just felt like they tried to put too much into it for me.
Yeah, but I mean, I think considering they had all this stuff that they needed to do, and obviously with the next episode being Dead to Rights, they couldn't do it in that one.
Yeah.
And after that, it was all very bunched together, and they had to do all these bits in the following episodes. I think what Dodger did was, I think it set everything up quite nicely as well. This is my point of view. But I think Oliver with McKenna, kind of, although it ended 2 episodes later, it was quite interesting to see how in episode 16 and 17, McKenna's there pointing a gun at Oliver, and that Oliver was obviously going to have to get out of it somehow. And because of episode 15, that is able to happen.
It was also kind of the first episode to put Felicity in, like, the real line of fire as well, which I think is quite important for her character.
She had got introduced the episode before, and that was the one where Felicity was like, do I help them, do I not help them? And it was really a kind of benchmark for Felicity getting involved. But as I said, everyone has a different view. The one that I liked the least was episode 6, which was the bank robbers. I thought that was a bit of a confusing episode.
Legacies,
that's the one. No, yeah, possibly. But yeah, I think it was a very weird episode. I can't remember. I don't think there were very many flashbacks in that episode. And I think if there was, I think it went to the boat, if I'm right in thinking. And it was all very confusing. And also in the episode you had one of the bank robbers was one of Robert's friends, and he was in the list as well, I think. And he found out about Oliver's secret, and then he died, and it's all very confusing.
Oh yeah, because he got shot with a shotgun, didn't he?
Yeah, and then the one thing that I didn't like about that episode as well was that it started off like what some of these shows, some of these crop drama shows that I see, where the middle of the episode or the ending of the episode is at the beginning. And as much as that's good for shows like NCIS or those kind of shows, where I enjoy them and it's suspense, it was that episode it didn't really work on Arrow. And I think it's why they didn't do it again.
I can't remember that off the top of my head, but I think I know roughly what you're on about. But yes, the episode just didn't flow very well, and even the island flashbacks weren't particularly amazing. I think it was just the reveal of the father's notebook and the fire and things like that, and it just, overall, it wasn't one of the strongest ones. I definitely agree with that.
Yeah, I mean, I think the flashback where you see the notebook is quite interesting, and the fact that the notebooks suddenly come into it, and this is how Oliver's managed to get it in the present day and stuff like that.
Because he sees flashes of his father as well, doesn't he, and has a conversation with him.
Yeah, and I think he did it he saw it with Robert, and it's like, and then he held the piece of paper up to the flame, and you think, well, okay, fair enough, he's used this notebook to disguise in previous life. Where has this notebook come from? Why is it only show up when you put it in front of the fire, kind of thing? But it was kind of just sort of a non-event episode, really, I think. You agree with that?
Yeah. I think there has been a few episodes where they just haven't got it right, but it's the first season. They're finding out what fans like, what fans don't like, and I don't think we've had that many bad episodes overall. No,
I think that the ones, obviously personal preference, but I think the ones we've named are pretty much the only ones personally preference kind of thing. The rest of them were very strong, and they were all very connected, and they all kind of helped out with what would happen. It was very good. I think that brings us, interestingly, into what was the best scene of the season, do we reckon?
Ooh, that's a tough question. I'll have to have a think on that one. I'll let you guys discuss that while I have a think.
Hey, Cory?
I think you could even split that into sections, because you could look at best emotional scene, best fight scene, and so on. I think obviously one that sticks out is when Tommy dies, the emotion sort of between Ollie and Tommy, the apology and everything. That was quite a powerful scene. I also think another scene that I guess is kind of an extended scene, I think it was episode 14, when Slade comes and fights Wintergreen, kills him,
Yeah.
fires, shoots Slade, Ollie helps him out, and you kind of see he's starting to get used to island life, fend for himself a bit. I thought that was quite a decent scene as well.
I think
There's one more actually that sticks out also in the finale. It was just when Ollie gets back to the Arrow Cave, he's going to go out again, gets his old bow, and Dig says to him about a soldier never lets a brother go into battle alone. I thought that was a nice scene because you sort of see the three of them really strong and working together.
Yeah, I was going to go into that one first, but yeah, I really like that one because it shows how far Diggle and Oliver had come. Back in episode 4, just after Diggle had found out about Oliver, Diggle wasn't happy, he quit, when he was down the Arrow Cave, Oliver had just saved his life, and then he tried to punch him in the face.
Yeah.
And you think, he's just saved your life from the person who killed your brother, and really you're going to punch him in the face. It's not really an appropriate reaction, I think. But to see how they've come from that, especially with the dilemma that they had with Deadshot a few episodes before, it was nice to see how they kind of made up and all that kind of thing. But if I just go back to the scene you mentioned before, in episode 14,
Yeah.
bit that I liked where Oliver was kind of dragging Slade away and trying to save him. It was really good because up until this point, Oliver has been still sort of selfish, as he was before the island, and he's only just met Slade, and he's helping him out still.
Yeah.
So it kind of shows where they can go and the friendship that they could have. As much as Slade likes to annoy Oliver sometimes say a lot of the time, about how weak he is and how pathetic he is. I think episode 16 was a good example of that. But it is a good benchmark for where their friendship begins.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
For me, I think the best scene was, there were a lot of really powerful scenes over 23 episodes. One of the ones that really stood out for me for a long time was the Tommy reveal scene. I really liked that one. I thought that was really well done. And although I wasn't so happy about another person finding out about Oliver's secret, I think the way they did it was sort of, if I tell you this to save your father because I care about you so much, because you're my best friend, sort of thing. And it was a kind of necessity that they did this. And I thought also the fact that they did save Malcolm in that scene is kind of ironic, that he saved Malcolm and then he ends up trying to kill him.
Yeah.
He has already tried to kill him and he tries to kill him again and he's trying to destroy the city and all that kind of thing. So I really like that scene. There was the fight scene in Home Invasion between Oliver and Mr. Meg House that I just thought was absolutely brilliant. It got to a point where I was starting to watch that on rewind almost as many times as I watched the Tommy reveal scene, which was quite interesting. But yeah, I really liked that one. And then there were two more scenes in the last two episodes, which was the fight scene between Malcolm and Oliver at the end of episode 22, and then it was the Tommy dies at the end of 23.
Yeah.
And I thought these were really powerful scenes. Obviously, you said about Tommy dying. I think Malcolm fighting Oliver, it was very interesting to see how for the you got a minute fight scene, I think it was, roughly, and you've got this point where Oliver has already been... He's tried to kill Oliver back in episode 9, and then Oliver saved his life in episode 16, and now Oliver's trying to kill Malcolm. And it's all very... it's turned a lot from back then, back from 4 or 5 months before. And then you have the fight scene, and then Malcolm finds out who Oliver actually is. And it is the fact that he's like, oh no. And you see him sort of doubting, I've tried to kill him before. This was a mistake, possibly.
Yeah.
And I really like that. So I think, CJ, we've given you more than enough time to think and some scenes to give you a spell.
All of the ones you said, yeah, we'll just go for that. No, some of my favourite scenes, and they weren't in it very much in the second half of the season, was all of the Oliver and Thea scenes. I thought they had some great screen chemistry as a brother-sister. You could really believe it. And at the start of the season, their kind of scenes where they kind of stand together talking over Robert's grave, and Thea kind of trying to reach out to Oliver, and Oliver trying to look after Thea as well and trying to stop her taking the drugs and things like that. I used to love all of those scenes, but they don't seem to happen as much in the second half of the season, which is a shame because I thought they were some of the standout ones for me. Really enjoyed watching them.
Yeah, it was a shame, but what I liked about the last, like, I think it was up until about episode 12, 13, that kind of stopped. And I think after that it was quite good because you had more Thea and Moira scenes, brought Roy into it, and Thea was kind of interacting with different people. You had Laurel as well that she was with quite a bit, because obviously she was sort of...
Laurel's like the big sister, really.
Yeah, Sienna, right. And it was quite interesting to see how she reacts to all these other characters that she's been able to react with for the past 5 years that Oliver's not been there. And it kind of shows that, yeah, okay, I've introduced you back into my life for the first few months, but now it's kind of going back to how it was for 5 years, where I was kind of, where she was, 12, 13 when Oliver died. And sort of go from that, from being really young, and then in her main kind of development years, she's known without a brother. And so she kind of acts in the later season of the season how she did throughout those 5 years. You think, yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, we didn't see in the kind of flashback episode, pre-Island episode of 21, we didn't see anything of Thea, which I thought was quite interesting because we didn't get to see, obviously she'd have only been 12, 13, but we didn't get to see what she was before the island happened.
Or the closeness between her and Oliver as well, because it sounds like they had a very close relationship before he left.
Mm.
I also found it quite funny watching Oliver and Laurel before he went into the ship when they were sat, she was studying and he was getting pizzas and things. Just the hair and the way they were going on was just so funny because you know they're not that age and they just looked a bit off, but it still kind of worked.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was because of the fact that Oliver is part of this huge billionaire family that they can sort of do that. It's not like we need to be kind of acting old because we need to go out and work and that kind of thing. Because Oliver didn't really need to do that. Laurel obviously did, but I think it wasn't really Laurel that was being sort of kind of childish. Do I say that? Yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah. It was more Oliver's side, especially when he called up Sarah, asking her to go around the block a couple of times because Laurel was there. It was kind of a childish relationship on his part, whereas Laurel actually wanted it to go somewhere.
Isn't that usually the case? The girl always, in TV shows, the girl wants more and the guys just want to go out and party?
Yeah, definitely. Yes. Okay. One other thing I wanted to say, favourite quote of the season, because obviously favourite scene is a bit different. Cory, what did you think? Favourite quote?
One that I remember and liked, I think it was, towards the end of episode 14, Ollie says to Sade, I'm stuck on an island and my only friend is called Wilson, which I thought was I think it's Castaway, with Tom Hanks. I thought that was quite funny, and that sticks out for me.
CJ?
I kind of like the scene, like the conversation between Tommy and Oliver, rather than just like one individual quote when he's talking about, did you kill my father? And Oliver's like, no, and his last words were, thank you.
Yeah.
Which I just thought was kind of nice.
Yeah, that was quite good because it tied into the fact that we've had this really emotional encounter between the two. We started off the episode where Tommy hates Oliver, and then it's sort of, in the middle it's kind of evened out, so Tommy's sort of annoyed at his father, annoyed at Oliver, but he still kind of likes both of them, and at the end it's sort of pleading to Oliver for peace and kind of thing.
Yeah, Felicity always seems to have like one-liners as well that I think made us love her character. It's like something along the lines of, when my partner gets here, he's going, or like, no, you can be upset when my partner gets here, or something like that. And Felicity seems to just have these great one-liners. For example, what we're saying earlier is, and I always imagine this under different circumstances, her character just seems to throw out these one-liners that are very, very entertaining. I think we could just pull up a full list of Felicity quotes and just run all of those off.
I think I was going to say that it wasn't really a particular quote, I don't think, that I had. It was mainly a lot of the Felicity quotes. I mean, there are a few. In episode 14, when Oliver's lying shot in the back of her car, and she's sort of very calm about it. And I thought that some of the stuff she said there, which I can't remember exactly, it was quite funny. And then you had the last 3 episodes where you saw a lot of Felicity and Oliver possibly sort of flirting kind of thing, mainly from Felicity's side.
Yeah,
and
I just pulled up one of the quotes that made me laugh. If you'd want, I can read it out here, which I just thought it's kind of inappropriate but kind of funny. Felicity was saying, "It feels really good to having you inside me, and by you I mean your voice, and by inside me I mean my ear. I'm going to stop talking right now." And then Oliver turns around and says, "That'd be my preference."
Yeah, that was when I was trying to remember that quite actually. That was when Felicity was just about to enter the club, and that was very funny. I liked that one. But there was one in the finale that I found really quite funny as well, which was when Felicity said to Oliver about last time you talked to Moira, was it? Yeah, the last time you talked to Moira about this, you got shot and I got to play doctor with you. And then she kind of said something that we've been thinking all season when we've seen her, which is my brain thinks the worst way to say things.
Yeah, like I say, Felicity's just the best quoted character in Arrow. And long let it continue.
Yeah,
I definitely agree there. Definitely agree there. Okay, I think we've had a very long discussion about that. So let's going to talk about a few odds and ends that we haven't yet talked about. I think I'm going to just start off by saying I don't think we talked about this, about how every character in the entire series, whether it's been on the island or in the present day, and even if it's a really minor character, has developed a lot from where they were at the start when they first got introduced.
Yes. No, it's been, for a first season, they've done a lot of character development where everyone's kind of flipped on the person they were. Thea was this very immature person that was doing drugs and was partying, whereas now she seems to be... Well, I think she's because she's fell in love, she's matured a bit. She's noticed Roy is kind of immature as well, and she's trying to bring out the best in him, which has brought out the best in her. She's looked at Laurel as a kind of role model and trying to be like her. Laurel's kind of went from being this kind of, pardon language, but this bitchy little thing that's not letting anybody in and just had this no-strings relationship with Tommy to finally letting someone else in and becoming emotional and upset by the end. Obviously, Oliver, we've known he was this playboy, and now he's moved to this more, I wouldn't say adjusted, but from when he's returned from the island, I think he's started to show more attachments to people and is not as cold-hearted. Diggle has opened himself up to his sister-in-law and has kind of been like a mini-father figure or like another brother to Oliver. And I could string off a whole list of characters, but there's just been very big progress for all of the characters, and I think in the season finale it's going to again push these characters in a different direction because of Tommy's death and what's happened in the Glades, and obviously the Queen's link to that, and I think it's going to again build on some very interesting character development for season 2.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I mean, there's definitely been points in the season where you introduce a character like Amy Felicity, and she's come in episode 4, and she's just this really geeky kind of weird person. And then you come up and she's found out about Oliver, and she's sort of matured a little bit, and trying to be a lot more serious, make less joke, kind of like she was in the first few episodes. And now it's come to the series finale, and she's like, if you're staying, I'm staying. And she's become this really sort of, I want to say aggressive, but kind of more serious character than what she was originally.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think even on the island with someone like Slade or Shadow, when they got introduced, they were definitely with Slade, he was very aggressive. He didn't trust Oliver at all. At first he wanted to kill him, before he realised that Oliver is actually, like him, stranded on this island. He wants to get off. They both want to get off, so they both have a mutual idea what they need to do. So they have to work together so they can both get off. And Slade realises this. I think I really liked how they went from Slade being like that to what he is at the end when he is almost Oliver's quite close friend on the island.
I think that relationship is one of the ones that's probably going to explode, and Slade is going to be kind of like an arch nemesis. But it's interesting to see how they've went from kind of at each other's throats, literally, to becoming really, really good friends and brothers in arms sort of thing, to then something happening and then becoming arch enemies. And how that happens and how that develops will be a very interesting story to watch in Season 2, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I think that worked really well because obviously they've trained on the island, Slade tried to train Oliver, and they've worked together. And over these course of however many years that they've ended up stranded together, we don't know yet, Slade found out a lot about Oliver, and Oliver found out a lot about Slade. So whereas when he confronted Malcolm, say, back in episode 22, and he didn't know that he was Dark Archer, he didn't know that Malcolm was going to have that much strength against him. But if he does eventually end up with Slade's arch nemesis, and he does go up against him, he's going to know what Slade is capable of, and Slade's going to know what... Slade is likely to know what Oliver's capable of because he has trained him to be similar to himself.
But I still think Oliver still has that more human side. For example, when he had the option of getting off the island or saving Shadow, I think Slade would have sacrificed her to get off the island, whereas Oliver takes the more human approach, and I think that's going to be the one difference between the two of them. Yeah,
I definitely agree there, and I think that was quite clear as well in the finale when he told Tommy that we still don't know if it's true whether Malcolm is actually still alive or if he is dead, because there have been a lot of things that I've read that are saying he's dead, but then there are some things that are saying that he's just passed out.
I don't think we actually saw him die, so therefore I think he is alive. Unless they make it explicitly clear, like I always say, if you don't see them explicitly seriously die, as in you see them lose the head or explode, they are still have potential of coming back, unless they're Tony Almeida and you could chop his head off and you'd still find a way of coming back.
Okay. Just on that point, so are you saying about Tommy as well? Do you include Tommy in that?
No, Tommy's dead. You saw him dead. The executive producers have said Tommy is dead, and that's going to be the impact. Whereas Merlin, they've kind of haven't really explicitly said if he's dead or not, and I think they're leaving that open because they're going to bring him back. Whereas Tommy is dead. He's gone. Let's face it, Laurel, you're not going to get him back. So, you know.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm going to have to agree there. But the thing I really enjoy, the thing that really sort of made me think that Malcolm's not dead, is the fact that Oliver, to kill or stop Malcolm, he put one of his arrows through himself into Malcolm. And it didn't seem to affect Oliver that much. Obviously didn't kill Oliver. And so I think, although Oliver would have targeted somewhere where it could kill Malcolm, it is highly possible that he managed to survive it.
Yeah, because I think it was kind of just below his heart, whereas Tommy got it pretty much through his lungs and heart.
Yeah.
And I don't think there's any coming back from that, whereas because Malcolm was pretty much talking afterwards, and Oliver, because you think they're roughly the same height, I think Malcolm's slightly taller, the angle of the arrow would have just put it roughly where Oliver was stabbed, so I think it was more kind of a knockout blow than it was kind of a fatal blow, instantaneous. But I think it will bring back John Barrowman, because I think he's been a very big enemy, and I think there's still room to finish off his story. Whereas with Tommy, I think they've done everything they need to, and Tommy's character can have more impact being dead than he can alive now.
Cory, any sort of opinion on this?
I'm pretty much in agreement with you guys. I mean, especially with Tommy, I do think his story was up. I mean, the only other way, in terms of sort of keeping him interested, the only other way you could have gone is him taking up his father's mantle as Dark Archer, but he never seemed that sort of character to me, so, yeah.
No, And I think also, I agree with you there, it didn't seem like Tommy was that sort of character, because when he found out about Oliver, he was totally against this sort of thing. And although it would have been taking up the Dark Archer suit, Oliver's killed my father, I'm going to take up the Dark Archer suit to get revenge on him. It wasn't really that kind of thing. And I think, had they gone down that route, it would have kind of ruined a lot of the characters. Because, as we've said, they all have a connection to Tommy, and it would have really, especially Laurel and Oliver, I don't know how they'd have been able to cope with the fact that Tommy is, I don't know if it would have been secret or not, but Tommy has gone on to the bad side, and it's sort of, it's not very good.
Maybe you can still expect to see another Dark Archer, because you think there's been many years that Merlin was Dark Archer and he could have had a protege of some sort, so there is still a possibility of another Dark Archer appearing in the second season or the third season, because we don't know what's happened in all of these years in the background.
No. I mean, the one thing I noticed about the finale upon one of the rewatches was that when Malcolm had Oliver captive at the start, there were at least 3 people there that knew that Oliver was chained up. So technically that makes it about 10 people that know Oliver was the vigilante, including dead people, of course. But you would think, although obviously Oliver killed all them, how many are there more people out there that Malcolm has got on his side and trained up? I mean, when they had the big meeting in the pre-Island flashback of episode 21, you had more than just Robert, Frank Chen, and Malcolm, and there were a couple of other people in that room, and you think, what happened to them? Did Malcolm get them on their side, or did he kill them like he did with Robert? And you think, if he did keep them, and they did follow his idea, would he have trained them to be someone like his Dark Archer personality was?
It's a tough call to really try and predict, but you can see that happening, and as we know, Oliver's absolutely terrible at keeping his identity a secret, which is always great fun. And these TV shows, superheroes always seem to hide it pretty well, yet for some reason Oliver seems to tell every Joe Blogg and Jane Smith that appears in every episode, oh hi, by the way, I'm the Archer, which is kind of weird. But hopefully in the second season he'll be a lot better with his identity and things like that.
Yeah, I mean, the one thing I did notice was that Malcolm seemed to be very good at keeping a secret, because I think the only people who knew were obviously the bodyguards, possibly the people in that room pre-Island. Oliver found out, Tommy found out because Malcolm showed him, but it was when, in episode 22, when Malcolm was at Moira's house, and they were talking about how, and to quote Moira, your archer, your assassin, didn't do a very good job of keeping it secret. So I don't think that even she knew about the fact that Malcolm is the Dark Archer.
Yeah, I don't think she knew.
And I think that one thing, obviously Malcolm was, obviously I think subconsciously Oliver's going to learn a lot from what Malcolm did, and how to be a much stronger person, and this coincides with the island as well. I think that there's going to be, Oliver will be much more careful with who he tells about his secrets. Yeah.
Well, until he meets Roy, and then Thea, and lets them know.
Yeah, that is an interesting way of thinking about it. I mean, I think a lot of people are pretty established that they're going to find out. But what would be interesting, there's a lot of theories here, what would be interesting is if Roy or Thea found out, one of them found out only, would they tell the other one?
I think Roy will find out, and he'll start working at the club again, and he won't tell Thea.
No, I agree. And but then the other thing is that I think, what if Laurel was to find out?
I don't think they'd do that so early, do you? Not in the second season.
No, I don't think. But I think, obviously, future seasons, what they could do, and if Laurel was to find out, how would she be able to keep that from her father? Because, as we know, her father pretty much hates Oliver. Although I'm not sure whether he'll still hate him after the finale, I'm not sure I'll get to that. But he hates Oliver, and he seems to kind of, although he seems to be helping the city, he kind of hates the vigilante.
Yeah, but don't forget, obviously, Laurel as well has the potential to become the Black Canary. So she could find out and then become another vigilante, which would be very weird because the Black Canary has, like, superpowers, in a sense, which allows her to kind of, like, have high-pitched tones and things like that. So it would be hard to see how she could become the Black Canary because Arrow's based more on real-world kind of comic book style rather than comic book superpowers sort of along those lines.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't read the comics, but I don't know if the Huntress... I think the Huntress was a character in the comics, wasn't she?
I believe so. I'm not 100% sure on that.
Yeah, and I'm not sure if she had superpowers, but when they brought him to it, they didn't give her anything, did they?
True. So it'd be interesting to see if they do have Laurel as the Black Canary, but I think it'd be too early for them to do that with her. But maybe that's when she finds out about Oliver, she then becomes the Black Canary.
Yeah, and the point is that if she doesn't have Oliver, it's whether she decides to become the vigilante, whether I don't think she would turn her in and think that she cares about him too much for that. But it would be interesting to see how she's able to hide it around Detective Lance, because obviously he kind of hates both personalities, and he's a cop. Well, suppose he was a cop. There's been a bit of debate as if he'd be probably lost his job for the second season, but it's one of those things whether is she going to be able to hide it from him.
Maybe you'll find out in one of those cheesy TV scenes where he's lying dying and then she goes over to him dressed as Black Canary and then reveals herself.
Maybe. I think, yeah, as you say, that's a debate for a long way down the line, past season 2, possibly past season 3 as well, because it's well too early to introduce into that. Would you agree?
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
Okay. So is there anything else you want to say about Arrow, CJ?
Is there something we can actually fit in that we haven't already talked about? Is that probably the better question?
I don't know. Cory, anything? No?
Not really, no.
No, I think we've talked about pretty much everything possible in Series 1.
I'm sure if we've got something, people listening can fill us in and we can spend another few hours talking about that next time.
Yeah, I think we've taken a long time here. I think that's pretty much getting to the end. So I think I'll wrap it up here. This has been the ArrowFansUK Season 1 review. I've been joined by CJ Allan of Doctor Who Spoilers and Spoiler TV. You can find him at... What's your Twitter handle, CJ?
You can either find me at CJ Sonic or you can find my Doctor Who one, which is at DW Spoilers.
Okay. And Cory, you can find him at...
I think it's Mundane Chatter or something like that. Don't ask me why.
I'll tweet it out. I'll tweet both of you out. And he helped me out on the site, and over the summer we're going to be adding a lot more things about Arrow, previous episodes and that kind of thing, and obviously features for Season 2. So, hope you've all enjoyed this podcast, and we'll see you again next time.